response video to Professor Anton's video. I have to say it that way, I suppose, because probably you won't see my video. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Maybe I'll put this one on YouTube. Alright, I'll do that. Time for updates anyway. It's going to be a long video though, so sorry. Probably going to be long. I don't see how I can't play his video and respond without it being a long video. But it's probably got something will be good in there somewhere, I'm sure. So anyway, the subject is determinism, and Sam Harris has written a book called Free Will, apparently. Look, this will thing is not that complicated. There's nothing inside of you, okay? There's no Jiminy Crickets, there's no fairy godmothers, there's no mechanism that's going to give you good advice. There's no mechanism besides your understanding, your exposure. You kind of have to watch Bambi, or some other moral story or ethical story or some other thing that's going to say to you something. You read Moby Dick, and you gain something out of the experience in terms of understanding, and that little bit of programming, that understanding, will make choices in your life. It will be the part of your conscience, the thing that says you want to be a better person, or this is the development of character. Character is developed inside of our brain. Our brain is changed, and the reflexes are nuanced based on our experience and our exposure. It changes us. Everything that happens to us changes who we are, whether we like it or not. Everything. Every single thing. Somebody shows up and they got a wart on their forehead or something, and it's going to affect you. It's going to change how you will now react to the world. And all the choices, all the stuff that takes place inside your brain are not really choices. They're just how things will tumble and what bumpers it will hit, like a little pinball-y thing in Japan. It's just going to bounce down the things, and it's going to do that without Jiminy Cricket pushing it. Okay, there's no other thing in here. There's just your stuff, your programming. So there is no such thing. All there is hard determinist. So you can't rag on hard determinism, because hard determinism is all there is. There are no magic bunnies, there's no leprechauns, there's none of this extra abnormal stuff exists. Okay, all there is the fundamental material mechanism, and our brain is not focusing energy from any other source. It's not sucking in cosmic rays, and we don't have a cosmic ray detector that's nuancing the messages from space and then changing our program. It's just not happening. So he rags really hard on Sam Harris. He calls his book a piece of it's almost funny, because he says, I'm sorry, I meant farce. No, wait, turd of a book, titled Turd of a Book. That's kind of aggressive language for a guy who's really reserved usually. Is controlled. Oh, I forgot to control my hair. That was supposed to be my thing. But anyway, so I'm sorry to preface this so deeply, but there's the free will is we can't feel that way. We don't feel the way the world is. We feel because of this whole emotional thing and this whole illusion of consciousness. But you can't sit there and go, because I don't feel the programming isn't there. We are smart enough now to understand that that's what's happening. I feel the way I feel because of my life experience, and because it's been registered in the billions of neurons I have. That's why I have billions of neurons, is because they're recording a lot of stuff. They're processing a lot of events, and that's why it requires billions of them. Okay, let's play ball.
Okay. First off, I think there are different kinds of errors that we see in the world, and it's not just our perceptions of things. Now,
well, look, the whole word error is just a non-starter in a way, right? It's another one of these words that we've inaccurately labeled things. An error, all that means is something deviates from a norm. it does it usually for a reason, okay? I mean, there's a cause and effect, okay? So there's causes that break things down or cause things to degrade or cause things just in this cycle of things, they get out of sync, and that out of sync creates an error maybe 1 in a million times. There's machine, if you work with machines, you can have a little tiny misalignment, and everything will work fine. But 1 in a million times, like a leap year, that misalignment will pop up and cause an error. And so I mean, let's not make something out of this word. It doesn't mean much. It doesn't mean something's dysfunctional. It doesn't mean something isn't going to accomplish way beyond the error rate. It's just a dangerous word to play with, as if there's something that's just fundamentally wrong, or whether it's just the fact that nothing's perfect. Anything less than perfect is now going to be described as an error. I mean, you could take it to that extreme and say anything that deviates from perfect is error. I mean, is that going to go anywhere?
You can try to come at it that way. Okay, let me see if I can cut some of the differences and then talk about it. There seem to be, and this is my understanding of it, right? There seem to be the experience of things not being right, of something being wrong, that is incorrect, which means that I had in my mind some way that it could be or should be, but in a fully deterministic universe, everything couldn't help but be what it is. Now,
yeah, well, that's just so easy to understand, right? I mean, the idea that your brain could have more than one model of the future in it, or more than one model of you. You can see it in your dreams even, okay? I mean, you can take on all kinds of forms and manifestations. Now, what exactly it has in your subconscious, what exact arrangements it has that it's measuring now against, and that's sort of what it's like. It's probably putting transparencies up against each other and looking for differences or something like that. That's sort of how a mechanism of error checking or pattern checking would be, and that's what our brain is doing. It's pattern checking. It's looking for similarities. It's looking for things that are categorizable, and that's how logic functions. That's how you filter intelligence out of an environment, is to start categorizing things, identifying them, identifying function, identifying probabilities. So your brain does that, and that's sort of a good illustration of conscience even, because conscience is always kind of running the good man program, or the best effort program, and it's running that, it's showing that movie, okay, and then it's showing your the little devil program, the I win, the I win and the everyone wins kind of scenarios, and the fact that the I win world, okay, I don't get as much, but the everyone world wins, there's more winning that happens, and so it throws those two things into the screen, and yeah, which one you will choose is still going to be decided by which program is stronger, which principle has developed into your character and become a prime directive versus a lesser directive. But yeah, I mean, it's not, I mean, you're talking as if it's magic, and again, it doesn't need to be magic to have more than one model of consequence.
someone might say, well, yeah, you're just determined to experience the error. At a certain point, though, that doesn't make any sense. That literally doesn't make any sense. I mean,
well, again, it does make every bit of sense, because the opposite is impossible. Okay, I mean, it either comes from you, or you're saying it comes from some special force, or it comes from some special cricket in your head. Okay, there's no other place, there's no other mechanism, there's no other thing here that's affecting your consciousness, but your consciousness, your brain is doing the work. Again, you want to keep saying you're channeling some other special knowledge. That's an extraordinary claim, and that sort of requires extraordinary evidence.
do you see that the language that we're going to use keeps smuggling in something like an experience of the ability to choose otherwise? Now, not the ability to have chosen otherwise. I think there is something very important about this point over past behavior. When you look back over the past and you think that you could have done otherwise, you're pretending you weren't there.
Yeah, well, again, you're going back to this word of choice, and this word of choice came up, is an archaic. All of our language was built by primitive people, who gave things, who had no, who couldn't go this far. Okay, I mean, some of the ancients did. I mean, but like I said, they were drowned out in the voices of, as a voice of reason. The philosophers were killed off, and the preachers took over the world. But regardless, these words have all had that narrow definition of ignorance, and so yeah, we know better now. We know this word choice is a lot gnarlier than it was 1,000 years ago.
Something very important to understand, that the past as past couldn't have been otherwise. You couldn't have done other than you did, because that is literally pretending you weren't there. It's trying to give yourself an alibi. It's trying to hide from the decisions that you actually made. That's what that is.
Well, I mean, if you're going to concede that point, if you're going to concede that Jiminy Cricket couldn't have said anything else to you, or whatever the special mechanism outside of yourself that was responsible for the behavior could have said something different or could have pushed harder, could have. It seems to me that it's a perfectly reasonable to say, if something had changed, I would have acted differently. If we could argue that every person who has been abused by a parent, if they weren't abused, they probably would have acted differently past that abuse, that their life would have been different. We can all probably think of events that took place in our life that changed us, the ones that we noticed. There's a whole bunch of them that changed us that we didn't notice, that are still subconscious and not consciously recognized significant events. But they're all little packets of 20 seconds here or 10 seconds there, and if I extract that from your life, I would have extracted your behavior. I would have changed who you would have become. And that's just the nuance of our existence. That just points out how fragile this whole thing is and how vulnerable it is to just the tiniest of influences. So I guess I don't know exactly where you're going there, but I mean, you're sort of nailing yourself down by saying that, okay, if you couldn't change the past, well, then you can't change the present, and you're not going to change the future. Pretty much.
That doesn't mean, though, that we don't make decisions. Okay, but let me see if I can't. I'm going to get more to the decision stuff and the elongated present, and how the present itself as a domain of mediation grows in history, and how that domain liberates certain kinds of agency, deliberation, and what we experience as some kind of freedom. It's not...
Well, I know. Well, you're going to keep playing this game. I mean, you can't say what we experience as and then say you're making an argument against hard determinism. Hard determinists don't say you don't experience it as. They don't care what you experience as. They're attempting to explain, I'm sure it's Sam Harris is attempting to explain the mechanics of your function. He's not explaining what you feel it's like. He's explaining how it works. I mean, there's a huge difference.
Superlative freedom coming from on high. It has to do with emergent freedom that's built evolutionarily through organisms.
Emergent freedom again. So even this word freedom, I mean, it's another non-starter for intelligent conversation. You can't have intelligent conversation using the word freedom. I mean, highly intelligent. You want to put it to some higher standard, it's okay with me. It's a broken word. It's a completely non-functional word. All there is the confinements, okay? The non-freedom is the real story. Freedom is white space. Freedom is not the thing, okay? Freedom is what you have when you don't have restrictions. But everything is confined by something. There's nothing in the universe that is absolutely free, or even close to something that you could call generically free. Nothing is free. This plant outside my window is not free to go run down a gazelle and suck its blood. It's got a ton of limitations built on its physical form. So it has a tremendous absence of freedom. Yes, it's free to blow in the wind, okay, but its freedom is completely limited.
Were able to relate to themselves through communication technologies and gain the distance from themselves to come back to themselves with a little bit of reflection and some distance and some foresight.
Yeah, well, that just sounded kind of like mumbo jumbo, so sorry. No sale on that kind of crap. You don't look back on your blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we all have a history. And all of that history is dependent on our exposure. And we can gain more history by more exposure. So we can edify ourselves. We can read Moby Dick and some Dickens and some this and some that and some philosophers and some history. And we can do all that stuff, and we can gain a tremendous amount of context and advice and learning. I mean, some of the old philosophers, all it is a list of, hey, this is what I've learned over my life, so here's my list of 50 things to do not do. You know, always make sure your shoes are flat, and you know, tie your laces, and don't take any wooden nickels. You know, I mean, yeah, and that's how we become who we are. Where's the complexity here? Why this need to try to say we're something more than that? We are a product of our exposure, fundamentally. We're a thing that's capable of absorbing nuance, and then we express what we've absorbed. I mean, that's basically the mechanism. So people who don't absorb much, you know, who just occupy themselves with something stupid, you know, watching the same TV show over and over, or, I mean, even some TV can be edifying, but I mean, you know, people who wasted their time, you know, running back and forth, throwing a ball in a hoop or something. Yeah, they're not going to gain a whole lot of perspective, nuance, edification. They're not going to absorb a whole lot of history and context and understanding doing that. It's not an information-rich environment. They'll learn how to interact with other people. They'll learn skill sets. They'll learn strategy sets. But yeah, they might fall way short of being capable of understanding social dynamics and geopolitical blah blah, because they don't have any context. They don't have any contextual information on any of those subjects.
Okay, so let's take some different errors, and these would be ones I'd throw out for people to consider. Okay, now, and these are, you know, some, I guess, that came from the list, and some that just from, maybe I should have spent more time on the video. I was trying to keep it really brief. Okay, so you could try to stick with really simple ones, like, okay, so there's a sense of, I'm typing and I make a typo, or I'm calling someone and I type in the wrong number and I get the wrong person, and they say, oh, you got the wrong number on a phone call. Now, was that an error? Now, in some way, we could say, well, yes, obviously, I pushed the wrong buttons.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna redefine a word so radically where it isn't automatically a yes answer to it being an error when you press the wrong button, I mean, come on. I mean, you know, you inaccurately pushed your finger. It was a millimeter off, and you hit the button next to the other button. I mean, if that's not called error, I don't know what the hell can be called error. I don't know what good the word is anymore if that's not going to be an automatic yes. So it seems to me that you're going to play an incredibly irritating word game here.
And I got the wrong number. Well, where comes the framework that it was wrong? From where
well, the framework is just so obvious, right? That everybody has a number, right? So, yeah, I have a Social Security number. That number hasn't changed in my whole life. If somehow it changes, if somebody changes it, if somebody doesn't do it right, it's not me. I am that number. I'm not something else. I'm that number, and anything else is not me. And so if you're looking for me and you're going with a different number, you're not going to find me, and it's going to be an error.
Now, you might say, well, you were trying to call one person and you got another one. Yeah, but my trying from the hardline determinist position was not my trying at all. It was just the outcome of previous acts. So in some sense, I just did whatever I did. Where are you? You're introducing some...
Oh, I'm probably going to skip over some of this, because this seems awful desperate. Right? I mean, any machinery pushed to have to do something faster is going to short circuit the trying mechanism. Okay, it can't function if you push it too far, if you push it past its capacity. And that's essentially what we're saying here. Most of these errors are created because you try to take a shortcut. A shortcut. You juggle, for Christ's sakes. You understand the fact that you miss. And why do you miss? Because you're going beyond the capacity of your programming. You're pushing it to its limit constantly. You're constantly saying to your physical body, do it to the limit of your capacity. Do it to the limit of your capacity. You're always introducing errors because you're forcing it to become perfect, right? Non-error. You're forcing perfection on it and saying you're going to become perfect at a speed level that you can't achieve now. But you will achieve it in the future because I'm going to keep pushing you to that perfection. I'm going to keep forcing you to take all the unnecessary code out of this mechanism, to make it perfectly efficient so you can throw these things faster, catch them better, and perform better. And so, why are you doing this? What is this? This is, arguing about whether or not it qualifies as a mistake to the performance you're achieving, that it's something less than perfect, is quite obvious. Alright, I'll jump to 6 minutes and hope that we got some kind of better argumentation coming.
Oh, and where is this you who compared the experiences to say that that one is incorrect? That is, where is the error when you thought the error was this thing and then it was really something else? You see what I'm saying?
No, because I don't have the context of playing the video. That doesn't really matter. Where is it? It's in your brain. That's why there's 100 billion neurons in there. There's a ton of reflexes and programming. Just a ton of it. And that's where it is. Okay, you ask where is it? It's in your brain. And it's all programmed by your experience and your practice. Your practice makes you capable of coming closer to perfect, right? That's why that cliche actually means something. All right, we can do the Edison thing. Perspiration. Life is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. Yeah, you have to do the work to acquire the skill to refine and perfect yourself in all kinds of ways. But it requires the neurological work. You have to refine the function because there's lots of sloppy in it to start with.
That you're introducing, how do I say it? See, I think a lot of people, look, let me back up here. I guess I'm all over the place. I think.
Yeah, just think of Mr. Spock, right? I mean, what is the Mr. Spock ideal of and there's nothing illogical or unintuitive or emotionally wrongy about Mr. Spock. I mean, they tried to make him out to be that kind of character, but we all identify with him. We all identify with that kind of part of ourselves that is structured and logical and disciplined and methodical and careful and is functioning as best possible to evaluate the best possible strategy. Just very good game play. Okay, not being an individual anymore, but just being a machine. And we can all understand that. We can relate to that, and that's sort of what we chase in some respects. Some part of myself, anyway, is that's what you're after. Is this refinement of yourself? But unfortunately, we are animals at our core, and the monkey, sitting in its underwear with a banana in its hand, is inside of us. And he's not really interested in that conversation. He just wants to watch porn and eat his banana.
Some people want to believe that the only errors are errors of thought. That they're going to do something like this. Like the world is perfect. The world is just as it is, but thought is the problem. There's even a response kind of saying,
well, look, the world is the source of thought. The world is the energy, the function, the everything that we model is in the world. Okay, so when we model something like logic and we model something like refinement, this whole idea I just did of filtering Filtering is a function in the real world. That's why we can conceptualize it. And that's why our brain takes advantage of it. Because it's a concept. It exists, okay, as a way of cleaning, cleansing. So that's the opposite of error, is this cleansing of the slop, or the imperfection, or the less than useful, or the dysfunction, or the, you know, the anything that's going to create that problem of imperfect function.
It's really in the intentionality of the person. It's the person's intentionality which recognizes the error as error. And without the
intentionality is this kind of another one of these tricky words. There's just programs. Yeah, you have dominant programs and recessive programs, right? You have prime directive and lesser directives. You have principles that say, I will not harm somebody or something, and I will not do this, and I will not do that. And so as soon as your brain recognizes that you might be breaking one of your prime directives, it'll inform you that prime directive is in danger here, and you've got to modify this behavior. That kind of thing. And how does something become a prime directive is just through your life experience and the fact that certain things are going to stick to you. You're going to watch a movie and it's going to bring a tear to your eye, and it's going to change who you are.
Conscious intentions of a person claiming that it's an error, there is no error. And that's, again, I was trying to illustrate that. But there, I think you end up with some sense of conscience, intention, or some sort of conscious intentionality that we end up, okay, well, this is some kind of agency of some sort. It's being exercised.
Well, the agency is a byproduct of a brain that has more than one competing interest, is the way I would look at it. The programs are running, and they all have different prime directives. The biology has a prime directive, the innate reflexes. So maybe that's a good example. There's times when you reflexively, you know, like you felt something on your eye, and there wasn't something on your eye. But unfortunately you had like mashed potatoes on your fingers, and you just smashed mashed potatoes on your head. Now, yeah, it was like one program said, I'm overriding everything else. And so the other program didn't even get to say, but wait, I have mashed potatoes on my hand. Okay, so that's the way it's happening. We're competing with different levels of our construction. Different levels are attempting to initiate action, and these other ones have to inhibit that action, or they have to enhance the probability of that action. So even you could argue it that our fantasies are higher level constructions, but often we construct them to entertain a lower level. So it's like we create a game for our crude inner self to play, to jerk off to.
Okay, if people want to say that it's simply an issue of how we assign errors, how we say that something is an error, or the conscious recognition of error, and so that the only kinds of errors are us thinking of errors, that there's no errors in the world, I guess I want to raise questions about birth defects. Okay? So, a birth defect.
This has a lot of straw man in it, right? I mean, you're making arguments that somebody's saying something that I don't think anybody's actually saying. So this is already going to be problematic, okay? Because I mean, I'm going to consider myself a hard determinist, but I'm certainly not going to say there isn't error code, so to speak, built into everything.
Happens, and we look down, and some baby is born without limbs, okay? The baby is born without limbs. Is that just variety, or is that an error? Now, how would you know that that's an error? When we say that DNA has redundancy built into itself in order to prevent errors and minimize errors in the transmission of genetic information. Okay, what is that? Why does apparently something non-conscious without any sense of agency, okay, I'm going to say, hopefully we're in agreement here, DNA does not have any agency. DNA does not have any agency. But there's information. There's information at that level of DNA.
Well, whatever. There's function, okay? DNA is a simple process, okay? The building of it is simple, all right? It's like a little robot that builds a building one brick at a time. Okay, it doesn't have to be very complicated. It does one kind of thing. It just puts brick, puts brick, puts brick, puts brick, and it could make a very tall thing out of put brick, put brick, put brick. And all you have to do is modify it just a little bit, and all of a sudden it can do put floor, put floor, put floor, put floor. And you modify it a little tiny bit, and it could make lamp, make lamp, make lamp. And that's what DNA is doing. It's a really simple, crude build construction of an incredibly complex blueprint of construction. All right, one cause and effect sequence at a time. The DNA creates a chemical reaction that 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 leads to, okay, the division of cells in a certain way, the destruction of that daughter cell and go for the second daughter cell and blah, 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 and all this chemical crap that happens. It's all a sequence of events that's completely dictated by a cause and effect chain built into the molecule. So the molecule finds the structure of evolution is you need to create variety to improve the gladiator. So the gladiators fighting you have to throw new things. Here's a tin can. Let's see how they do with a tin can for an arm. You know, it does this stuff to create new mechanisms of fighting to see if something, you know, because that's going to make you more capable of making a winning gladiator. And as long as the amount of failures doesn't really matter, and it's only about the successes, as long as you don't have to care about the carnage created in the process of making the wasted hamburger on the floor, you can make this perfect hamburger this way. But yeah, there's a ton of hamburger on the floor. And so part of the mechanism is this idea of doing sexual reproduction. So that's how you can have these birth defects, because two recessive genes. So neither gene is broken or errored in its function by itself. But when you put them in combination, when you put those two things together, okay, you create a circumstance of catastrophic brokenness, okay, that won't be functional. It will be a failure. It'll be a failure by the standard of being anything close to the gladiator or the perfection you're attempting to create. But taken alone by themselves, those recessive genes have function if they're in combination with the 99% of the other genes they usually come in contact with. So it's only in the rare circumstance when these two, you know, little bits of millions of bits of code happen to be identical that you have this problem, this glitch in the mechanism. So yeah, I mean, whether you call it error or not doesn't really matter. The point is it's a function of the mechanism to create variety, and in creating variety, you're obviously going to create varieties that are very, very, very far from functional.
Can there be errors there? Can there be various forms of birth defects as error in the DNA, or is there no error at all? Things are just unfolding according to as they had to unfold.
Well, look, there's also errors in DNA replication. Okay, the little bits, the little chemical bots that read the DNA, that split it and recombine it. Okay, they can be influenced by some aberrant chemistry that infiltrates, radiation or something else, and it will make a piece of chemistry that usually doesn't stick. And yeah, the little bot isn't smart enough to know. It's like the little brick making bot. Well, if something happens to its supply of clay and the big bricks aren't being, you know, it gets a hollow brick, it's not sophisticated enough to know that one of the bricks is hollow, and it's really an important cornerstone brick, and it just doesn't have any way of gleaning that error out. So the error remains in the structure.
Now, if you say that a birth defect is an error, you're imagining that it could have been otherwise.
Well, this imagining it could have been otherwise is just a mechanism of the fact that in most of our circumstances we can play ourselves doing different things. So we can imagine a fake world where we do different things and we can choose one of those things to do. The brain can look at the different ones and say which one has this kind of output, because we're doing the filtering thing again. All right, so yes, there is only one world, there is only one deterministic end, but we are part of the deterministic end. My computers are determined. you know, they don't look it, they don't sound it. Your video doesn't sound like it, but it's just doing a deterministic event. It's, you know, and our brains are the same thing. The logic and the visualizations we will have of possible futures, those are all deterministically made in our brain. They're not something we're creating out of nothing. We're creating them out of our determinism. So again, we are part of the determinism. We don't sit in some shield protected from determinism. Our brain is determined.
Right? Or no? See, I think we're back to this issue.
No, we're always back to the same issue, which is you play these preposterous word games. You sit there and complain about people who, what's the word, reductionism, and yet you will attempt to reduce words that have no character. They were created as simple placeholders for a concept, and you will sit there and attempt to use them explicitly as if they are precise language when they aren't precise language. I mean, there's just no point in doing that. All right? Really intelligent people, scientists, aren't going to play with a word like spontaneous because they're going to know it's a bullshit word. And you know, intelligent philosophers should just stay away from some word like error.
Well, to what extent is there delay? To what extent is there lag time in commitment? To what extent is the present an elongated present that opens and stretches itself along enough to make little tiny differences of decisions? It doesn't.
Yeah, whatever. The present is making my decisions. What does that even mean? No, my brain, my personality is making the decisions. I won't all of a sudden talk like Professoranton unless my brain deliberately says, let's do a spoof. All right? My personality doesn't just migrate to some other personality. I mean, this is, come on. This is just mosh.
Have to be these grand superlative senses of free will, like you just self-fashion and you do whatever you want with yourself and you have supreme control over yourself.
Yeah, you. I said self. These are illusions. All right, you are a machine. Okay, this idea of you doing, no, the machine does, the programming does. So again, there's no you to be doing any of this stuff. I mean, there's a you in that you're an identifiable machine, but there's no you making decisions for the machine. The machine makes the decisions. You, the you, all the way to your core. I mean, there's no, you know, there's machine Gary. There just isn't anything else. There's no Gary inside of Gary making decisions.
Well, that's just ridiculous. But to deny it all the way down, to deny that we make small moments, this is why
we. What is the we that makes these small blah blah blahs? All it is programming. There's nothing else in there. There's no we in there. There's programs, there's education, there's exposure, there's learning, there's all of that stuff, and there's no special sauce. There's nothing else. There's just my programming.
I find the compatibilist position of Dennett so far superior to the kind of drivel and or garbage that Sam Harris puts his name on.
Well, I hope it's okay then to call what you do drivel and garbage, all right? So for all the people who get all panicky because somebody says a derogatory word on this fucking medium, with this guy included, so that's the okay rhetoric, right? I can just call it garbage. I'll sing the garbage song, the drivel that he puts on paper, the silly, the universe fucking itself in the ass kind of nonsense he pukes out on the internet. So okay, he's set the standard now, right? We'll call it drivel. You driveling ass-tard.
I find some of that just to be ridiculous. How anyone finds that, how they're able to take it seriously.
Yeah, well, and people find you preposterous. Who can take seriously some asshole who talks about the universe, scratching its own bunion? Bullshit.
Seriously, I guess they don't. I can't. I guess other people don't, because to take it seriously would imagine that they could do such a thing. I guess people just read it and respond to it like they do, just, you know, as atmosphere just happening in the air.
Yeah, I've heard Sam Harris say some stupid things, but frankly, I haven't seen him write too many stupid things. But you know, I'll definitely check it out. You know, I suppose eventually. I really not. It's not a subject I have much interest in, but I'm pretty sure Sam Harris didn't say anything to justify your outrageous reaction. So why don't you quote the little bits of Sam Harris that you find so objectionable? But that's right, it's not about the bits, it's about the overall theme. And the overall theme is probably something like monkey see, monkey do. And the only way monkey is not going to do that is monkey has to become better than a monkey. You know, that's probably the part you don't want to hear, is that we're basically monsters, Frankenstein monsters, and the only thing that has any value is our edification.
I mean, some people with the hardline determinist positions, it's as if they act like life never occurred, and then from there, like culture never emerged out of life. It's everything is just matter in motion. They seem not to realize complexities of emergence.
Yeah, complexities of emergence. Again, this doesn't say anything. Okay, I mean, function can be built out of the mechanics. Okay, the diamond can be created and it can be refracting, do the reflection thing, which most rocks can't do. So diamonds can do things to matter and energy that other pieces of crap can't do, because it was built by a circumstance. All right, and eddies in a stream can keep things spinning around in circles for days and days and days and days. Yeah, so it has an apparent complexity, but the complexity is made out of crude, simple forces. There's nothing emerging there's nothing forcing emergence on it. There's nothing pushing it to that end. It's just the fact of this is what will happen when you have too much water going through too small an opening.
Complexities that come from the kinds of domains of presence, domains of immediacy that evolution has made possible, right? So let me see if I can give some really quick examples.
Domains of immediacy that evolution has made possible. And you're going to call somebody else's writing garbage? I mean, if somebody wrote that in a book, I'd be like, what the fuck? Could you come a little closer to speaking some sort of recognized language? What the fuck is that nonsense?
Okay. My guess is that if you watch yourself very carefully, you will see that you can think before you speak. You can think about some things, you can say,
should I say something?
And then you will decide what you're going to say.
Yeah, look, there's the conscious brain is way, 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 way below the subconscious. Again, I'll go back to juggling. You're a juggler. You must know this, that the automatic reflexes turn on, okay? And it's done all subconsciously. You don't move your hand 3 feet to the left to grab it because you know it's over there. You don't think about it. It just goddamn happens, and you know it because your body recognized through practice that, oh, I threw that one a little crooked. It recognized it. It went over where it had to go to catch it. Now you know that's what's taking place. So you know you're functioning on more than one level. And the whole time you're juggling, you could be thinking about some chick you saw that has big boobs. I mean, your brain is doing more than one thing. All right, so what you're conscious of is just always it's a byproduct of the much quicker subconscious. Your subconscious puts these slow little sentences and these words in my mouth, and all this stuff is coming out of my subconscious, and my consciousness is slow, and so yeah, it's processing it pretty slowly, okay, but my subconscious is way, way, way ahead, all right, and it put the smile on my face, like laughing at myself because I'm so fucking retarded and slow. It put that on there. I didn't say, oh, smile now and laugh, because it is kind of funny that you're such a slow asshole. But yeah, that's what consciousness is. Consciousness is in this really thick, dense fluid, and it's moving really, really slow. And everything that's feeding it is moving much, much quicker. So it's way the hell ahead. So yeah, by the time you say to yourself, I'm going to say, Your subconscious has already got your speech in written. It's already written. Okay, so even though you're sitting there saying, well, should I say something or shouldn't I? Guess what? It already wrote the speech. Okay, it already made the decision. You're already done what you did. It's just waiting for your consciousness to catch up so it can shove the speech in your mouth.
And now, it's not always the case. I don't think we want to be dogmatic there. There's lots of times when we just spontaneously speak our thoughts. But there are other times.
Oh, yeah, well, this whole video I just made, I didn't sit there and construct any of this. My consciousness had nothing to do with it. It all came out of my frickin' subconscious, my known how to make video brain, my how to make video reflexes completely took over. Okay, my subconscious created all the connections to history or connections. Well, this is a good argument and that's a good argument, and put this bit in, throw this bit in there, but this is really intuitive, and it did all of that crap. I didn't do any of it. I'm sitting here looking and saying, well, the camera's kind of white. Hey, look at the little red light. I mean, that's my consciousness isn't even in the game, barely. Barely is my consciousness in this. I just said all this shit while I was thinking about white camera. My brain constructed a whole bunch of sentences and now it's saying them while I'm thinking about white camera and little red light. I mean, come on.
When we can think through what we're going to say before we commit it to work.
Yeah, well, you're sorry, okay? I don't mean to be patronizing, but you're being deluded. You're being tricked by your brain, okay? Your brain, the part you think is thinking through is just plain retarded compared to what your subconscious has already done to create that conscious idea that you're thinking. The conscious idea that when you're like, I'm going to think about it. Well, guess what? Your subconscious just did that. It just did this Shakespearean, I am going to think about it. I mean, it's so far ahead of you. Okay, your subconscious, the part that you're not aware of, is really, really smart. Okay, the consciousness is this slow, mechanical, it just doesn't have the articulation. Okay, it can only throw the horseshoes at a certain speed. Okay, and that's it. It can't throw them any faster. So that's a huge limitation. If the brain waited for the consciousness, we would take us 7,000 years to learn anything. Okay, because the consciousness is so slow at doing anything. It doesn't. Well, in fact, it doesn't do anything. That's why the consciousness is slow. Is because it doesn't do anything. These are, for us to do what we're doing. This reflex. This is an automatic reflex of vocabulary. We learn how to do it just like juggling. We do it, but we can't do it any quicker. And that's a limitation. And of course our brain can do it faster, so it is doing it faster.
Words. And once they become words, now you can't take them back. Now your thoughts you can't take back, but your thoughts are always private. And in that sense, to think rather than to say is to exercise the freedom of whether or not you're going to inflict this upon others or whether you're...
Well, to exercise the freedom. Again, it's not you're not exercising a freedom. It's just another one of these simple choices you make 9,000 times a day about whether you're going to compromise somebody else's welfare a little for your own advantage or do this. I mean, all the time these decisions are made, and that's just another one of the simple decisions you make about whether you're going to hurt somebody's feelings or whether you're going to expose a piece of yourself and subject yourself to a ridicule, and whether that has some kind of consequence like, oh, well, now I can't be president of the United States because I said something rude. I mean, but again, all of those calculations are made outside of your consciousness. You don't consciously decide.
And you keep it to yourself. That could be a very big difference. It makes all the difference in the world, whether you're keeping that to yourself or you're going to say it all out. And you have a choice whether to commit that. Very often. Not always.
Well, the whole point is you don't really make choices, okay? Your brain decides. It doesn't make choices. It just decides. It just runs right into it, and it just plows one way or the other because the weight is there for it to plow one way or the other. The road is tilted. That's just the way it is, and it won't be till you make a mistake that your brain fixes the tilt in the road and says, well, tilt the road the other way because I was a real asshole last night. We don't want to do that again. So tilt that fucking road the other way, so next time that decision comes up, make sure I plow the other way. So it tilts the road. I mean, come on. But we don't make a choice. It's an illusion that there's any kind of ever 50-50 thing. There's always a tilt in the road, and when the thing comes towards it, it's going to go the way the tilt is. And you can only correct the road in hindsight. In hindsight, you can say, that was dumb, fix that road.
Very often. Now, let's take that. Once you do start to speak, there is a little bit of choice in how you're going to select your words. It's almost like thought is like a shadow cast if you're walking, westward in the morning, where it's sort of...
Well, like I said, thought is part of the conscious illusion. You're not really thinking. That's just a projection your subconscious creates. But it's not really happening. There's no real thoughting happening in your consciousness. The thoughting is being created by your subconsciousness. You can't see anything in your consciousness without your subconsciousness making it. So of course it's all a construction of your subconscious.
Like the shadow is rising ahead of you and allows some determination of the possible words that you could choose to help complete this sentence and to help it make sense.
Well, again, that's not the way it functions. And the more likely things are to be in consciousness is the more, like, say, if the brain has some true dissidence, it has time. It doesn't have to go through the road right now, and it doesn't like the look of the road. And so it has another trigger that says, well, cycle through some more, figure, do some looking around. And so, but again, it's doing that 3 seconds or whatever before you're even consciously aware that there's a problem. I mean, the subconscious is way ahead, and it's just trickling nuance into your awareness just to make it coherent to your vocabulary. I mean, it's like each piece has to communicate. It's like we are more than one brain, and they have to communicate with each other based on what's in the environment. So it's that whole split brain thing, 2-eye thing, where you can actually separate these things quite easily, and all of a sudden you'll be of two minds. Well, that's the way that the whole thing is functioning, is that all of the pieces of your identity, all these different programs, can only communicate with each other through this environment. All right, through subtle ways, through those mechanisms. It's not the only way, it's one of the ways they communicate with each other. And so they're in a way waiting for how the environment responds to make a final decision. So some of the things are so nuanced, they're so important, they're so critical, and they can afford to do this thinking thing. They can take some time, and when they can take some time, they'll wait to see what else the environment will give them in terms of information. So they'll wait to see what your words do. I mean, the ones I speak, they'll hear those, and they'll say, oh, those were pretty good words. And then they'll hear your response, and then they'll do something else with that, and they'll do some more processing. Any conversation about how our brain works is going to be a little bit complex and nuanced. And I think what you're doing here is way too sloppy for the caliber of what we're attempting to describe, which is our consciousness. I mean, it has to be done a little more deliberately than this.
And that's part of what you're doing. But even there seems to be another question of, do you decide to take what you've said and then...
Do you decide? Again, so this is just not... This language is too infantile, sorry, for the level of description. You're describing like a nuclear reactor by saying hotty stuff, hearty stuff, glowy stuff, I mean, this language is way too simplistic for the function. The we is not a workable concept. The I, all this stuff is not workable concept. Do you? No, the you is multiple programs, running. So there's no way to say the you, because the you is already a community. The you is already a group, and some of the group is thugs, and some of the group is Einstein, and some of the group is all kinds of art, and all kinds of things are in that group. And it just isn't going to work to say the you.
Write it down. See, when I move to the difference between thought and speech, and then speech and writing, and the kinds of deliberation and decision making that goes on. So I'm thinking something and I say, okay, that's right, I'm actually going to say this now and commit this to, once I've said it now, I couldn't have not said it.
Right, well, whatever. We already know, though. Your brain made the decision to say it long before you actually said it. So let me go to this ending. Oh, he's going to hold up a pen again. Oh, look at that. Oh, damn, not again. Oh, pitiful.
Right here on my right hand, and now it's in my left hand, right? It's in my right hand, here it is, and now it's in my left hand. It's always only where it is. But with language, I can talk about where it was and where it might be. I can say, I think I'm going to put it in my other hand. Should I? Should I not? See, as soon as you get to language, language introduces an entire representational order that allows for a pre-thought deliberation over the things, which means that we can have anxiety over the possibilities that we're facing.
Yeah, well, whatever. The language is built out of representations. Okay, so again, our brain translates English. That's why you can have a different. You can be Japanese, you can be anything, and you're still going to have this conceptual function. So it's concepts that your brain is working with. It's categories that your brain is working with. So animals have concepts and categories. Animals have identified hot and cold. They don't call it hot and cold, but they've identified it. They recognize it. That categories has been created. Okay, so they recognize the distinction between edible and not edible. These are categories right, but they don't have words for it. But the concept exists in their head. Okay, it has an identifier. It's fully functional in their conscious experience. So this obsession with language is great because we can use these overt symbols where we actually put a word on top of an item, and it makes it even easier, okay, for communicating. But language is about communicating. Internal language will always be created. What language allows us to do is inform each other and explain to each other our life experience and what we have learned. And so that's what makes language so powerful, is that we can take all of our personal experiences and convey them to each other, and we can write down in books how the physical world works based on experiments that people did in the past. So we can learn from the past, and we can build on to build a better future and all that stuff. That's what language allows us to do. But language has almost nothing to do with internal mechanisms. Those mechanisms are innate and functional. Language is about external communication more than anything else. It's about conveying information. It's not about something we do. Yeah, good enough. All right, now it's good. It's more than enough. Okay, we'll do a quick little update of the Do Not God website. That is really Vlogger Dome in disguise, right? All right, making suck arguments is not good. Okay, so this is a response to a conference report and the ACRA whatever guy about the stupid agency word and how it's all bogus, and conference report's bogus attempt to say that it's just not bad not to have harm. When obviously it's good not to have harm when harm would have happened. But yeah, anyway, it's an obvious argument, but I think it's a good video. Logic on, well, it's a little hostile, but whatever, that happens. This is just a walk and talk, but I thought it just goes through how the basic structure of our evolution. It's almost an F-list video, but it really isn't. It's more personal, blah blah blah. Determinism, agency error. So this was a Professoranton initiated response. More on this stupid agency word, which is useless in the error concept. So that Quint guy did a couple of videos that weren't horrid. So I did do responses to his arguments, and yeah, I think they're perfectly good videos. I mean, I think these are a lot of good arguments in some of these videos. So I mean, it's really hard for me to say great video, but they're all pretty good. Sticky, icky ideas. This is pretty good about how we acquire our personality, and what information sticks to us is because we have information in there, we're receptive to it, and all this kind of stuff. So, kind of just explains the sex of intelligence. Morbid, disgusting, pedophile. Oh yeah, that's this stupid idiot. What you call it? Smiling Andy video, and yeah, just this whole straw manning crap that he just keeps doing. It's about determinism, I think, is in there. But you know, good video. Here's the what the fuck. Yeah. But the stick cam was pretty good, so there's like 5 hours of that there. And I think that's it. I think there's 2 more here. The best road, the short and quick. Well, just something probably about efficiency or something, obviously, in terms of recognizing that it's, we're better off reducing our needs than trying to create or construct a fantasy Oz to live in. It's better not to need Oz. It's better just to need a little cabin and, because Oz is expensive. No one thing intelligence. No thing intelligence. I don't know exactly what that was, but oh yeah, I was supposed to date videos and I didn't do it. I'll try to remember to do that. But it is sort of a pain in the ass. Well, no, it isn't. It's really not that much, but it's like I got so much. There's everything. I mean, I can't get anything done. And it's like even dating a video, well, that'll slow me down another 43 milliseconds. But anyway, I'm just griping. So, that'll be it. Okay, we'll make it a YouTube video. Big, giant, preposterous YouTube video. So, till next time. But, like 10 videos. 10 pretty damn good videos, right? Yeah, that's what I say.